This little Ethan Allen drop leaf end table belonged to my mother-in-law, and when she downsized and moved, it came to me. And I decided I wanted to brighten it up a little bit and give it a whole new life. Hi, I'm Holly, and welcome to Hobbies by Holly, where I take old furniture and give it a second chance. Today I'm walking you through exactly how I transformed this dark table into a gorgeous farmhouse piece. So let's get into it. So first, of course, you always start off by giving it a good bath. I just use regular Dawn liquid dish soap and warm water and give it a thorough scrub. You want to make sure you get all the grime and dust and oils off, so that way when it comes time to paint, you will have a good fresh surface. And what I like to do after this is sand. And people ask, why would you sand? Why would not sand first? But you want to first get all the grime off, because you definitely don't want to sand that into the table. So here I am with my little mouse sander. This is kind of a beginner sander that I've been using for quite a while now, and it does just fine. Here I'm using an 80 grit. And then on the sides, I just take a sponge and wrap an 80 grit piece of sandpaper around it to get into those kind of more harder places to reach with the mouse sander. Then next I started filling in, and this is pine, so it's very soft wood and had quite a few little nicks, and they were minor, so I was able to use my AquaCoat wood grain filler and was able to go all over the top and fill it in. And you can see here all the different places. So then I went ahead and sanded those down and made sure that everything was very smooth. For this sanding, I used a 120 grit, so that way it's very smooth when you're wiping your hand over the surface. You don't feel all the little dings. And then the next part is the priming. And this being pine, you got to be really careful with the tannins coming through. And I like to use the Ben Advanced Primer Ultimate Stain Blocker. And this one's the water-based synthetic shellac, which I really like because it's much easier to clean up. So I went over all of the parts. You want to tape your drawers if you want to keep those nice little dovetail sides showing. And I did this twice because, again, being dark wood and pine, you just want to make sure that there aren't any tannins that can come through at a later time. For this primer, you want to let it dry for at least 45 minutes to an hour between coats, and do a light sanding as well. So I have a recipe of homemade chalk paint that I like to make. So it's 1 cup of the latex paint that I do mix with water and plaster of Paris. I added 2 coats with the light sanding in between. With all these little extras, with the little drop leaves and the nooks and crannies everywhere, it made it definitely a little challenging. So I wasn't able to use my paint sprayer, so most of this was done by hand. And then also with the drop leaves and the bottoms showing when the leaves are down, I felt like I should probably paint the bottom too. Once I was completed with the priming, it was time to start painting, and I like to use Behr chalk paint. This is called Silky White. And getting into all the little spindles, it was definitely an intricate painting job. And then my next step is I like to do a faux wood finish. So you saw me painting with the chalk paint, and once that was dry, I used dark walnut stain. I like to use these little throwaway paintbrushes too, by the way. They're much easier. Sometimes they get a few little bristles that you just have to pick out, but they're much easier to just throw away when you're done. And once I've applied the stain, I usually let it sit, depending on how long it takes me to do the full coverage, about 8 minutes to 10 minutes. And then I get a clean, I like to use old t-shirts, so get a clean cloth and just start wiping off that stain. You got to be careful with timing because of course the stain will start drying and it gets very sticky, and you definitely get a workout. So I chose to paint the table first, and so when that happens, and then when you stain, you'll sometimes get some drips or little flecks of stain, and so I had to go through and do some minor touch-ups on the bottom and a few other areas. And then the last step is the polyacrylic clear satin top coat. This is so important. This gives your piece durability, and especially on the tabletop or the front of the drawers, it gets a lot of traffic. I usually go through at least 2 to 3 times, especially the tabletop and the front of the drawer. I'm using my spray gun, which I really like to use. It's much faster. I will say though that you use up more paint when using a spray gun versus using a paintbrush. But in this case, it was much easier to get the spindles and all the little areas. As you can see, it's not just clean straight lines for this piece. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to reach all the different areas with the gun. And then the hardware. So I had this box of knobs that I'd ordered from Amazon, and I swapped out the old hardware for this simple matte black round knob, which I think is a small detail that helps pull everything together. And here she is. I was really pleased with the way this turned out. I liked lightening it up, and can't decide which way I like better, with the leaves down, which I think is so cute and charming, or being able to open the leaves up to give it a little bit more table space. If you're new here, hi, I'm Holly, and welcome to Hobbies by Holly. I've been flipping and restoring furniture on weekends for about 2 years now, and just recently decided that I'm going to start documenting my whole journey right here, at the transformations and the techniques, and sharing some tips and tricks behind the scenes. And if that sounds like something you want to follow along with, I'd absolutely love to have you here. So hit subscribe and come along for the ride. I'm looking forward to sharing more.